So today's episode is not exactly a murder mystery. It's, I guess, a bit of a scandal that occurred in the 1960s, really, dealing with a very famous actress at the time, Jayne Mansfield, and her relationship with another sort of publicity hound, I guess you can call him, named Anton LaVey. He was the leader of a group known as the Church of Satan. Anyway, their very brief relationship actually resulted in this kind of scandal that has followed the memory of Jayne Mansfield to this day. And it's really because of a couple of photographs that were taken and her rather minimal interactions with this particular person. But it's still kind of followed her into even her tragic death. So we're just going to read this article from the Daily Mail and discuss some of the aspects of this. I mean, I guess I can't really call it a case, but rather, I guess, this particular scandal. Okay, so let's begin. The Hollywood blonde and the Satanist. Bizarre relationship between doomed actress Jayne Mansfield and Anton LaVey that was cut short by her untimely death in 1967. So, we have a couple of photographs over here. I think this article has quite a few photos in it as we go through it, but you see her here, and she was actually only in her 30s at this time, but this was relatively close to the period right after this was when she passed. So this was one of her, I mean, I guess in the last year, maybe. We'll see the exact dates, but one of her interactions. So this was a photo shoot that they had done. So you see him with the Chihuahua. I don't know what the significance of that particular picture is, but you can even see, like, with his wearing the hood with the horns coming out and the cape, like he was just a real showman. He started in carnival acts, and so when he went mainstream, he brought some of that same mentality with him, and he really was somebody who people, I guess, they liked to watch because he was such a showman. He knew exactly how to attract a crowd, but that was something probably from his early training. Okay, so here we go. It was a match made in hell, so to speak. Jayne Mansfield was a fame-obsessed bombshell blonde whose star was on the wane. Anton LaVey was a publicity-courting Satanist eager to attract new members to his fledgling Church of Satan. In 1966, they met for the first time in San Francisco. They found in each other a kindred spirit with a desire to be famous and a daring to be different. The pair developed a friendship that some say was sexual in nature and continued to meet frequently until Mansfield's death in 1967. They met at the height of the liberating 60s, when attitudes about gender, sexuality, and nudity were in flux. Satanism, considered as the pursuit of a pleasurable and successful life, found a receptive audience in the thousands who flocked to California with a desire to become famous. A popular legend that might have been spread by LaVey himself asserts that he portrayed the devil who attacks Mia Farrow's character in the 1968 film Rosemary's Baby. On hand to document the budding friendship between the blonde and the Satanist was German paparazzo Walter Fischer, who arrived in the United States in 1956 with a parrot on his shoulder and a desire to photograph larger-than-life American stars. Little is known about Fisher. Many of his photographs were lost or only appeared in blurry newspaper archives. A Swedish collector named Alf Wahegren began gradually acquiring Fisher's photographic archive and connected with fellow Swede Carl Abrahamsson, a book publisher and American trash culture aficionado. And now the pair is releasing a book of Fisher's photographs called California Infernal. Anton LaVey and Jayne Mansfield, as portrayed by Walter Fisher. The book is being released by Trappert Books and J.D. Holmes. The fascinating photographs show LaVey performing satanic rituals in the Black House, his stark, ugly base in San Francisco's Richmond district. These pictures are contrasted with Mansfield in her pink palace, her singular shrine to excess in Los Angeles. When the two joined together at a restaurant in downtown Los Angeles or at the palace, complete with a heart-shaped pool, paparazzi were always on hand to snap pictures of the outlandish spectacle on display. So here's that. I mean, it's clearly a setup photograph. It's hard to say what level of involvement LaVey actually had with this particular group. I have a feeling, though, that he, was basing this on just the fact that this was the post, conservative sort of 1950s, and I think he, had a sense that there was either like an alternative or anarchist vibe within the culture, and he wanted to bank on it. But I mean, his costumes and all of this, it's almost borderline ridiculous. There's no way that practicing, if people are practicing some form of Satanism, that they're sitting around wearing hooded capes with horns, and this is like almost Halloween type stuff, but to an audience in the 1960s, because mostly these were posted in like low-level tabloids. If they were posted at all at that time, we'll have to see when these actually were published. But they would attract the attention of, let's say, a housewife that had not really had exposure to the kind of silliness that goes on in California. But these sorts of images would definitely have an effect because it plays into a concept that maybe someone like that would be familiar with. If he, came across as someone practicing these beliefs but was wearing a business suit, it would not attract the same attention. So this guy was definitely playing up the I don't know what else to call it, but a Halloween type, look that I think would attract a certain crowd because he knew where these sorts of photographs were going to get published, and he was just playing into it. Now, was there a darker side to it? Was he actually doing stuff? I don't know. We'll have to see if this article mentions more about it, but as far as these particular photos are concerned, I really do feel like they were just, done on purpose just to attract attention. So here she is, holding a skull, it's all very purposeful. Even her expression just seems strange. And they are supposedly in the middle of some kind of ritual, but there she is sitting in her mini skirt and boots and, doing a ritual and with this weird tiger. I mean, I don't know, the whole thing is very campy and just almost like it is a fair, like what do you call it? One of these circus acts or whatever. He was involved with those town fair level of silliness, but it probably did attract attention. So this is one of Fisher's photographs. And so here's another one. Again, he's in the cape, and now putting a spell on her, I suppose. I think this was the one where he's supposedly making her his high priestess, and she was also supposedly a sex slave of some kind. Again, just seated there in her boots. I don't know why that's so silly. It's just such a contradiction with the way that she's dressed and the way that he's dressed, and it's I don't it. But these were the kinds of pictures that would get sold, and I don't know how much, if they were making money or they were just making money from just getting the publicity in general. Okay, so here's the article again. They were so hyper, I wouldn't even say super, they were so hyper American, They had something in mind and they filled that up with high octane gasoline and went full throttle, Jayne Mansfield, in terms of not just wanting to be like a respected actress, she wanted to be a movie star, and a movie star in Hollywood. And she went all the way, said Abrahamson, who's 51. From the most crass point of view, I think there was a mutual admiration, almost a mutual insight. This is another weird person. We can sort of beneficially use each other for our own PR purposes. Mansfield and LaVey met for the first time when she was visiting the San Francisco Film Festival in 1966. Legend has it that she was kicked out of the festival after she arrived in a flashy pink dress without underwear. Differing accounts suggest that she had either requested a meeting with LaVey previously or, intrigued by reports she heard from fellow festival goers, simply showed up at his black house uninvited. Whatever the circumstances, she arrived at the nondescript Victorian house with her then-boyfriend Sam Brody during the festival. Brody was serving as Mansfield's divorce attorney through her third marriage. He was likely jealous of LaVey's potential influence on Mansfield, who was attracted to more muscle-bound men such as Mickey Hargitay, a former Mr. Universe and her second husband. Even though he was almost exactly the opposite from what Jayne found physically appealing, she agreed to a relationship with Brody because she imagined it would ensure her custody of her 4 children. Almost immediately, Jayne had second thoughts. Brody showed a side of himself that was violently jealous, imposing impossible constraints on Jayne. She was in the process of trying to ease out of the situation, but Brody was becoming only more protective, using her pending custody suit to maneuver her deeper into a relationship, noted Blanche Barton, a former high priestess of the Church of Satan and the author of The Secret Life of a Satanist. Perhaps this jealousy led Brody to mock LaVey's house of satanic obscurities at any chance he could. Barton writes that he picked up priceless objects and laughed at them, and then lit a skull candle in LaVey's ritual chamber. This egregious act was the last straw for LaVey. LaVey told him, "That candle is used only for curses. I don't know what's going to happen to you now. I only hope I've put it out in time." So here's LaVey in another photograph, whether this is the one with the Chihuahua. Again, I don't know what the significance of the Chihuahua is, but it might have been promoted like as some sort of animal sacrifice or something like this. I mean, I don't know why he's holding this little dog, but I'm just wondering, that might have been the way that this was being presented to the public. But I don't think anything like that was happening. It was more just for the image of just the wildness factor. So here they are, maybe in a more relaxed moment. They're just talking, and this is little Mariska Hargitay from the Law and Order series that she's on and has been for the last, I don't know, it's been quite a few years, but she was only 3 when her mother passed. And so she is one of the children from Mansfield's second marriage to the bodybuilder Hargitay, but she was in the middle of a divorce at that time, Mickey Hargitay. So he was a Hungarian-American bodybuilder. Okay, so meanwhile, Mansfield found within the house a fascinating, perhaps titillating new outlook on life, Satanism as the pursuit of pleasure and success. That could perhaps help her out of the rut of her declining celebrity. In a sense, she might have been desperate or clinging for straws, said Abrahamson. I don't think for a minute that Jayne Mansfield was interested in any occultism or any kind of, rituals and stuff like that. He added, I do think that if you look at the philosophy of the Church of Satan, not specifically like the magical rituals, but the philosophy being one of, pleasure and life enhancement, and just leading a very successful, pleasurable life, of course, she would ascribe to that. And in LaVey, she also found both Barton and Abrahamson assert an enticing sexual partner. Jayne was a self-realized masochist. She didn't need emotional turmoil. Barton writes that LaVey told her for her own ego gratification, she knew she needed public admiration, men fawning after her, etc. The more fawning Jayne received, the more she needed an antidote. But that takes incredible perspective to be able to remove yourself enough to recognize your own needs so clearly. Most people don't have the courage to take such a realistic look at themselves. That's why she enjoyed being with me, I suppose. I wasn't afraid to give her what she wanted. Mansfield herself did not comment on the rumored affair, but she became, it is alleged, further entranced with Anton's seeming power after an incident with one of her sons. So, here they are, I guess, at another event. Let me see if this was Brody in the picture too. LaVey and Mansfield are pictured entering La Scala, a restaurant in Beverly Hills. At the center is Sam Brody, Mansfield's divorce lawyer, and then boyfriend, who was supposedly jealous of LaVey. The tensions between the two men reached a boiling point when LaVey supposedly put a curse on Brody. And, so that's Sam Brody. He's clearly entranced with Mansfield. She's not really even paying attention to him, though. And LaVey might be more entranced by the car, it looked like. But anyway, even for just going to this restaurant, he's come dressed in a cape. So this was clearly just even for the photograph. I mean, these guys must have called the publicists. I remember I was watching this thing with Tom Cruise. I don't know what movie he was promoting, but he drove up in a motorcycle to some restaurant and was acting all surprised that, oh, you guys are here. He was referring to the paparazzi taking all these pictures, and then one of the cameramen said, your publicist called us. So, they're publicists and they're people that actually call these guys to be there, so that when the star rolls up, their picture gets taken. So there's, this is clearly one of those situations where they wanted to be seen, together. Okay, so I guess this is the interior. I didn't realize it was that big. I don't know what this is exactly. So Fisher traveled to Pennsylvania to photograph Mansfield's, that's Mansfield's funeral. So it's a Catholic church, obviously, yeah. It has nothing to do with LaVey specifically. Okay, a month after their first meeting, She took her 6-year-old son, Zoltan, to Jungleland, USA, near Los Angeles. He wanted to see lions. At the zoo, he was attacked by a lion and required 3 surgeries. Zoltan's recovery was perhaps sped up by LaVey, who drove to the top of Mount Tamalpais near San Francisco and conducted a satanic prayer to save the boy. Zoltan quickly recovered. Zoltan asked me for a snake and a kangaroo rat today, and his eyes lit up when I promised to get them, Mansfield told the Associated Press a mere 4 days after the attack. That just shows you that he can have his mind off of his injuries. Later, the duel between Brody and LaVey reached a breaking point because Brody tried in vain to control Mansfield's lust for the man who might have saved her young son. Barton writes that after Brody tried to violently stop one telephone conversation between Mansfield and LaVey by calling LaVey a charlatan, the Satanist put an irrevocable curse on Brody's life. My power exceeds anything you can imagine, and now you're going to feel it. You will be dead in a year, Sam Brody. I pronounce that you will be dead within 1 year, thundered LaVey. Mansfield and LaVey continued an intense correspondence over the next year. Once, Barton notes, Mansfield asked LaVey to send her an incubus, a male demon who visits women in their sleep. And of course, there were their meetings. They dined at La Scala in Beverly Hills, with LaVey sporting his cape, and they met for a photo shoot at her pink palace on Sunset Boulevard, and paparazzi were always on hand to document them as they held court. Fisher, the German photographer, quickly found himself in their good graces and secured intimate access to their publicity courting lifestyle. Fisher was smart enough to realize that this is how you do it. You do it the Slim Aaron's way. You strike up acquaintances, you make friendships, because then you're welcome back. You can always get, the latest gossip, the latest juice, the latest news, and you can get to see people several times. And that's exactly what he did with both LaVey and Mansfield, Abrahamson noted. Fisher documented the bizarre appearance of LaVey, a cape, horns and all, at Mansfield's pink palace. The pair was photographed playing with her pets, an ocelot and her 2 chihuahuas, chatting by her heart-shaped pool and performing on a garishly taxidermy tiger skin rug. LaVey worked out in the palace's gym, formerly the haunt of Mickey Arcadeo. So that's what that photograph of the chihuahua was. I didn't know. So he was just over at her house, and that's probably why she was in such, with the relaxed gear. But the fact that he's coming over there after the photo shoot is done, then he goes and works out at the gym. So, these guys were clearly just playing around, and then they had this guy Fisher, who they liked and who was willing to play up all of this stuff and take the pictures, and then he might have had some avenue to publish them also. The paparazzo would send along press releases to accompany his shots. One quotes both LaVey and Mansfield. LaVey said she thinks it's the greatest thing going. She is taking instructions. I made her a priestess and told her the concept of hell and paradise. I give her the usual information, working on ritual and how to cast spells. She likes to know about witches and love charms. She considers me a high priest. Somewhat conflictingly, Mansfield said in the same release, "It is very interesting. I know the real basis of his church. I think he is a genius, and I regard him as an interesting person. I am a Catholic and would not believe in his church. I am not a member of the Black Circle." So she quickly made sure that she contradicted any notion of being associated with this because, she still wants to be a member of mainstream Hollywood, and this might have, I think maybe after he made that statement that she's a high priestess or whatever, she wanted to quickly say something to negate that because she probably didn't know how it was going to be taken. Such contradiction should not, Abrahamson assert, that it be seen as shoddy journalism. So here she is, I guess, taken outside of her pink palace, which was her famous, home where she had that very, like pink carpeted bathroom and so forth. There might be a photo somewhere of that. Mansfield corresponded with LaVey between October 1966 and June 1967, and then she passed. So she said of LaVey and Satanism, what we just read, that it was very interesting and so forth. So here's another picture of her at her house. She's always kind of playing up her physicality and the glamour girl aspect. Because, that was her ticket, basically. That's how she was promoting herself. Fisher was not a journalist eager to find out all-encompassing truths. Drama and discrepancy just added to the power of his images. Abrahamson noted in this book's introduction, the relationship between LaVey and Mansfield was cut short by the actress's death on June 29th, 1967. She was 34 years old. She was in a Buick car, traveling from Biloxi, Mississippi to New Orleans, along with Brody, driver Ronnie Harrison, and 3 of her children, Zoltan, Miklos, and Mariska. Harrison crashed into the rear of a tractor trailer. The children survived, but all 3 adults perished. A rumor spread that Mansfield was decapitated because a blonde head of hair appeared through the Buick's windshield, but in fact it was only her wig. Later, LaVey conducted a satanic memorial service for her at his black house in San Francisco. So this is Fisher with his parrot, so he was sort of an eccentric character as well. And Fisher was present to photograph her funeral, which was attended by family, including her second husband in Pennsylvania. Perhaps in part due to their relationship's sudden end, the exact nature of LaVey and Mansfield's relationship remains shrouded in hearsay. But as Abrahamson suggests, that is somewhat beside the point. He wrote, "Ask the truth, if there is such a thing, about their complex and ever-fascinating relationship will never fully be known. Perhaps we should just be content with joyfully taking part of these larger-than-life space-time intersections and the individual legacies of these true American icons." Jayne Mansfield was born Vera Jane Palmer in Bern, Pennsylvania in 1933. An intelligent student, she studied acting at university and entered and won a quirkily named beauty contest, including Gas Station Queen, Miss Lobster, and Miss Fire Prevention Week. Her voluptuous hourglass figure cost her roles in the conservative climate of the 1950s Hollywood, but won her nude shoot with Playboy in 1955. So I think this is maybe Mickey Hargitay. So that's Zoltan. I forgot the other girl's name, and then I think that's little Mariska. So Mansfield is picturing her newborn son. Oh, so the newborn son is Zoltan. Behind her is her second husband, Mickey Hargitay, holding their son Miklos. Okay, so that she had 4 children. At right is Jayne, Mary Mansfield's daughter, by her first husband, Paul Mansfield, and a young Zoltan was later attacked by the lion. And so this is actually a very famous shot where she's at some event and is wearing kind of a pretty chesty sort of outfit, and Sophia Loren is also at the same table, was one where Loren was clearly staring at her chest, and apparently they said there was some sort of a nip slip, but I don't know. They said a wardrobe malfunction that was timed perfectly for publicity when she was at dinner with Sophia Loren in 1957. I don't know where that picture is, but they used a different one because that really is a very famous picture of just Loren sort of looking down at her and she being completely oblivious, you know, but she's not. She clearly knows that these sort of chesty outfits were going to get photographed and definitely get her publicity. The following year, Mansfield signed with 20th Century Fox, whose executives hoped she could become the new Marilyn Monroe. She was named one of the most promising newcomers at the 1957 Golden Globes for her performances in films such as The Girl Can't Help It, but by the early 1960s her career had fizzled out. Despite gaining some edge as one of the first major Hollywood actresses to appear nude in a film, Promises, Promises, in 1963, Mansfield lost her star. Even though she might have wanted to, I don't think she would have, as you say, cut the mustard. She wasn't really that talented. Her zest and her, composite drive to be a star, because that's basically what it was about her. She wanted to be seen and she wanted to be famous in the Proto-American way. And then she realized that it's all about PR, There's no bad publicity, Abrahamson said. But she might have been a victim of overexposure. From 1955, she scandalized the public with a series of playful wardrobe malfunctions. Most infamous was her photograph with Sophia Loren at a 1957 dinner party. Mansfield's dress was cut so low that a photographer snapped a picture showing her cleavage and one nipple. Loren in the photo is pictured gazing downward at Mansfield nipple. Her face is inscrutable. So, that is that, famous shot. It's a strange situation because Mansfield was actually, fairly intelligent as far as her IQ was concerned. I don't know if that's been verified, but that was the claim, that she had a very high IQ and she could speak 5 languages. So she was somewhat accomplished in other areas. But, she happened to be kind of voluptuous and she wanted to be famous. And I think she sort of misread Hollywood at the time. I think she saw images like Marilyn Monroe and, images of those kinds of stars and felt, well, guys just like them, and that's what made them famous, was just their physicality. That definitely played a role in those women and how they were promoted. But, Monroe did a fair number of films and she was a comedic actress, and so she had talents that were beyond just her physical looks. And I think that what Mansfield misunderstood was it wasn't just about the photograph or the image that made a person famous. I mean, that what was helpful to her in the beginning, that it caused a certain amount of attention, but it wasn't anything that had longevity. And the problem is you can very quickly saturate the marketplace, especially when it's a kind of image that is only appealing to males, and you don't really have any appeal to female audiences who are going to be half of the audience to purchase ticket sales. Like, you can't just focus in on one thing, because she became this sort of one-sided character, and I think she sort of misinterpreted what it takes to be the complete sort of star. She needed a little bit more backup in terms of the kinds of roles that she was doing, and she had to be careful of not overdoing this sex kitten image or whatever she was going for. So here she is at home with so this was Sam Brody and her 3 chihuahuas. I really don't think she was interested in Brody at all. I think she loved her children, and she wanted to make sure that she kept them. She had 4 kids, and she wanted to maintain custody. I think that at the point in her career when she was getting divorced from Mickey Argate, she really didn't have that much money because she didn't have films that she was doing at any time recently. They had been from a couple of years before. So she basically wanted to somehow secure her custody situation, and she met this lawyer who was probably enamored with her looks, and she knew how to play that up, and I think she just felt like she could maybe gain his services with this kind of relationship, but I really don't think she had any interest in him other than he might have made her feel secure, like given her some sense of security, because I think at this point in her career and life, she was feeling very insecure because it's a weird time in, Marilyn Monroe was also in her 30s. It's a weird time in actresses' careers, especially in the 1950s and 60s. There wasn't that much longevity to sort of maintain that ingenue kind of interest within the film industry. They had like this really tight pocket of time, and then I think once they hit their 30s or they got married or whatever, it was very difficult for the publicity departments to promote them, or they didn't know how to promote them, which I think has changed over the years. That women have had at least an ability to have somewhat of a longer career, but even actresses to this day complain about that issue that, once they hit a certain age, the types of roles that they are offered change dramatically, and not just age, but I think, just once they have kids, once, all of these things happen, people don't know how to promote them, because the easiest way to promote actresses, according to the sort of Hollywood machine, is to promote them in some sort of sexual capacity. You see this happen right away, especially when you have like sort of kid stars that as soon as they turn 18, they do a layout for Maxim magazine where they're just, in a bikini or an underwear set, and, like literally on their 18th birthday or something, those photographs get released where suddenly they're now able to be promoted as this very sexualized image, because they feel that that's the best, like it's the most viable period between 18 and I don't know, whatever the cutoff date is. But I've seen this like over and over again, especially with these kid stars. Like, they were kids up until suddenly they turn 18, and then boom, they're on the cover of that magazine wearing practically nothing, and it's just strange. I mean, is it their idea to do this, or are they told no, they have to do this? They either do like a Playboy layout, or the Maxim, I guess, is considered not as risky as a Playboy type thing, but it's the same idea that suddenly now they're being promoted as this sexualized creature, because it's just what Hollywood has always done. And then eventually that has, only so long that it can go, and they then have to do some sort of an image shift, and not every actress does this, but I remember like a whole group of, kid stars that, suddenly you would see them on these covers as soon as they came of age, and it's just an interesting thing that's how they are, I guess, told to, that's now the way that they're going to be pushed in the industry. And I think it's just because of the long-standing history of how, a male-dominated industry is sort of, kind of how they have promoted females from the onset. And it might have to do with just the history of how females even got involved with, the theater in Hollywood. A lot of the earliest female actors to come on stage in the era when they started shifting from all male, males used to play all of the roles. And then when that shift occurred, most of the earliest actresses were prostitutes because, self respectful women would never, be allowed to perform on stage. Their husbands or their families would not allow it. So the earliest people that came on were women that they could find on the streets or the brothels that, were able to do these kinds of things, and they didn't have the same sort of, issues as far as performing and so forth. But I think that the mentality then was also they were getting misused and abused behind the scenes, and it seems like that has never totally left, even as people moved from the stage to vaudeville to film. That mentality has never completely left, because you still see it in the most recent cases of like a Harvey Weinstein type situation, where there was some kind of an expectation that these actresses could be used in this capacity, because they were really only seen as sort of sexual creatures, and that might, stem from the earliest involvement that they had within the entertainment industry. And in the 1960s, 50s, and 60s, it was definitely still existing, but there was I think they had a little bit of they had to be careful at that stage. Mansfield was somebody who bypassed that concept and never thought she had to be careful about it. She just sort of noticed that, oh, okay, Marilyn Monroe and maybe a few others had done Playboy, and they had a kind of image publicly that seemed to be very flirty and sexualized, and she just jumped on that, but she never had anything else to counter it with, and I think Monroe did, and I think that's probably what Mansfield misinterpreted. Okay, so this is the picture of her pink house. It's a huge house on Sunset Boulevard, and it's now been demolished, but within it she had a heart-shaped swimming pool and other quirks, so it's really a lovely large home, and she was doing well within a short period of time with this methodology that she was employing, but then it was just very short-lived. It couldn't be maintained. And Mansfield's rather messy private life, so 3 marriages that all ended in divorce, along with allegations of numerous affairs, was very much in the public eye. I feel that a star owes it to her public to bring the public into her life. They, the fans, feel that they kind of own you, and if you kept your life a complete secret, it wouldn't be fair to them, she told English broadcaster Robert Robinson in a 1960s interview. Despite her cultivated image as the stereotypical dumb blonde, Mansfield was, by many accounts, a highly intelligent woman who spoke 5 languages and had a lust for knowledge, and in multiple interviews she appeared to be quite conscious that she was giving the public what it wanted. Nobody cares about a figure like 163, she told. She once said of her alleged IQ. Referring to her hourglass shape, she added, they're more interested in 40, 21, 35. Echoing this sentiment during a 1964 interview in France, she said, part of being a glamour girl is being, in a way, rather naive and helpless to the public, especially the eyes of men. So she was very well aware of the image that she was trying to portray, and I think it was her concept of what Monroe had done. Monroe always seemed very vulnerable. She probably was, she had a lot of issues, things that were going on, some mental health issues. So she was definitely vulnerable, but it was almost, I don't think it was as posed or put together. It was like a natural vulnerability that was getting captured, and it was creating a certain amount of sympathy for for her and attraction and whatnot, especially with the kind of mentality of men in our culture in that period in the 50s and 60s, that they wanted to be like the protector, the this, the that, whatever that sort of concept was promoted to males, and then she presented an image of somebody who needed to be cared for or protected in some capacity, and she knew, I think she did that naturally, though I don't think it was as planned out as Mansfield's. Was more like as if she was analyzing her point of view of what Monroe was doing, and I think she missed the point that it was a natural thing that would just happen to be captured. And maybe it was played up too, but I think Mansfield was looking at her from a female's perspective and sort of analyzing it in a very just trying to look at the surface quality of what she was doing and then trying to copy it, thinking that, men are the only ones who are going to purchase her tickets. And I think she missed half of her audience, and she didn't need to, because, she was a mother of 4 kids. She was, clearly somebody who liked men and was involved with them and so forth, but she could have also appealed to women if she knew, she was not including them, I think, in this publicity campaign that she was all about, and they're a major part of the audience. The fact that Monroe always seemed very innocent, I think it appealed to women too, and Mansfield, I think, missed that kind of vital point. Everything seemed like it was purposeful, and it becomes, I think, irritating when somebody is doing that over and over again. And I think that's where she might have overstepped a little bit, that this only could last, for those just a few years. I think it was just 3 or 4 years that she was able to do it. It became excessive very quickly. LaVey himself told Blanche Barton, Mansfield never had any reinforcement for her intellect. As she was around me, she would often try to be intellectual, recite Browning, and use a drawn-out ah sound. She liked to say amulet when she meant amulet. She thought it sounded classier. She made it sound like some obscene breakfast dish. Unfortunately, intellectualism clashed with the image she presented. People would laugh at her. Mansfield was survived by her 5 children. Okay, so even LaVey noticed that there was a big difference between who she was as a person and the image that she was portraying. And, maybe if she had played that up a little bit, and, she might have seemed to have some 3-dimensionality rather than this very cartoonish figure that she was appearing like. So I guess this is at her where she was put to rest. I guess he went just for the publicity, I'm assuming. I don't know why he even took this photograph. I mean, truthfully, he only knew her about a year. But, continued to play this relationship up afterwards. Anton LaVey was born Howard Stanton LaVey in Chicago in 1930. His parents moved to the San Francisco Bay Area when he was a child. He displayed a knack for musical instruments, particularly keyboards, such as the organ. His skill earned him gigs at churches and lounges down in Los Angeles. In considering why he became a Satanist, LaVey described the dichotomy between seeing the same people partying late into the night at clubs and burlesque shows on Saturday and then attending church on Sunday. This moral double standard that he perceived turned him off to Christianity. So, I remember reading an article about him where he was recalling this period in his life. So he was, hired as the organist at these vaudeville type type shows, and also at these carnival, type environments. So he would do this playing around. Let's say they would go to a particular town or some place like that. So he's seeing all of these characters drunk and doing all of these things on the one night, and then he would also get hired as the organist on that following Sunday, to play at local churches. And especially if it's a small town, then the same people are going to show up there. But I think he felt that their somber attitude on Sunday was a bit of an act, and that he would see their true natures just literally 24 hours before, because he was hired to do the organ work on both of these events. So I think that he just felt that there wasn't any real, they were just maybe doing more lip service by attending on the Sunday, but he had seen who they really were. So I think he became a little bit jaded from that particular experience, because he was working both sides during those younger teenage years. A discredited legend that was perhaps peddled by LaVey himself asserts that he had an affair with Marilyn Monroe while working the Los Angeles nightclub scene. He later moved back to San Francisco and began to study Satan and the occult. He began to develop a lifestyle and religion centered on the Church of Satan. We don't worship Satan, we worship ourselves, using the metaphorical representation of the qualities of Satan, he noted in Barton's book. The extent to which his church was authentic and to what extent it was a bit of a showboat is rife for discussion. He was known to exaggerate, if not outright lie, about his exploits. For example, he claimed to have shaved his head in 1966 in a ritual inspired by the devil-worshipping Yazidi people of Iraq, so as to become the high priest of Satan. In reality, his then-wife, Diane Hegarty, had simply dared him to do it. No such ritual even exists among the Yazidi people, but LaVey seemed to be in on the spectacle. I'm one hell of a liar. Most of my adult life, I've been accused of being a charlatan, a phony, an imposter. I guess that makes me about as close to what the devil's supposed to be as anyone. It's true, I lie constantly, incessantly, because I lie so often. I'd really be full of crap if I didn't keep my mouth shut and my bowels open, he wrote in his book, Satan Speaks. Actually, I have read some of his articles and part of some of his books. They're available on the internet for free. When you read them, I know on the surface it sounds like, oh, they would be really dangerous or whatever, just because he calls it like the Satanic Bible or, things like that. So a person just gets this impression from the title, but truthfully, when you read what he's written, he is not saying anything that would seem outrageous, especially in our modern culture. In our modern culture, the concepts that he was promoting in these books in the 1960s of just being self-actualized, and that, the sort of you're the center of the universe mentality, which is part of a lot of the stuff that's promoted in the New Age movement. The God within you, that kind of concept. It's not really Christian, though. It is part of this New Age movement. Some would say that there is a Luciferian underpinning to that movement, that it's being promoted by certain groups. But if you read his stuff, he was right in line with the stuff that has become mainstream, totally normal, appeared on Oprah kind of mentality of the New Age movement type concept. So he was not saying anything that would seem that dramatic. Nowadays, I don't even know if it would seem that dramatic. At that time, I think he was just plain, the title itself just is more shocking than what was in the book. And he's actually kind of a good writer. The only thing was he was constantly, almost like an and every, couple of paragraphs he would literally like sell his church, like, oh, come in and, be a member. It was almost like silliness, like he would actually be saying stuff that a person could relate to, and then he would throw this in. So I don't really know what his angle was, other than I think he became sort of jaded as a teenager in terms of his belief system. And I think he realized like what was fun in life for him was having pretty girls around and, being able to kind of make money off of what he was good at, which was just being, creating spectacles. That's what he had learned as a teenager working in these clubs. So he was like, okay, I'll make a spectacle that is, didn't really have that many attendees at that time, because this was like pretty alternative to the very conservative environment, but he was able to play that role, and I think he was, sarcastic enough and thinking that it's all silliness enough that he was able to get away with it and not really be affected by it in the same way that people thought he was. So I think it was almost like two people. He had a showman perspective that sort of provided for his lifestyle, and he was willing to play that show because he just thought the whole thing is silliness. And that's why, he's willing to wear these capes and horns and stuff, because this was just part of his character, the act. But it provided enough income that he could, live the sort of life that he wanted, which was, really just being able to mingle around within these, Hollywood communities and go to dinners and meet these actresses and have pretty girls at his shows and things like that. So, I don't really know how heavily he was into this. I think it was a surface version of what he had, read in a couple of books, because I think he kind of alluded to that's all that he had done. He had done minimal research and, then just put together an image that I think he knew would garner attention. But LaVey seemed to be in on the spectacle. Okay, so I think I read that one. LaVey married Carol Lansing in 1951. They had one daughter, Carla, born in 1952. He divorced Lansing in 1960 and began a 25-year relationship with Diane Agarty, with whom he had a daughter named Zena. In 1963, Barton, with whom he had a relationship after his breakup with Hargitay, Hagarty alleges that Hagarty did not mind the relationship her husband had with Jayne Mansfield. With Barton, he had a son named Satan Xerxes Karnacki, born in 1993. LaVey stuck with his brand of Satanism through various low points: the Charles Manson clan murders of Sharon Tate, who was married to Rosemary's Baby director Roman Polanski, and 4 other people that were linked to Satanism, a mass desertion of the church in favor of a rival in 1975, the satanic panic that asserted children were being abused during satanic rituals. In 1997, he died of pulmonary edema, and he was 67. Walter Fisher, sometimes, after documenting the exploits of the blonde and the Satanist, returned to his native Germany, where he died in 2000. Not much else is known about him. He was not very much in front of the camera. Just behind the camera sat Swedish collector Alf Wahlgren in 47, and Fisher's photographic archive seemed lost to old newspaper clippings until a German man named Sebastian contacted Wahlgren about his collection of 50,000 Fisher photographs. Gradually, Wahlgren procured the photos. Wahlgren, who lives in Uppsala, contacted Abrahamson, who lives in Stockholm, about his findings. Despite their geographic proximity and shared interest in LaVey, they had never crossed paths. So, Mansfield called Sweet Jayne while in a band as a teenager. It blew my mind because it took me straight back to my teens, which of course those years are important to everyone's lives, he said. The pair analyzed the thousands of photographs, including around 900, that were specifically of LaVey and Mansfield. I was 100% sure about which pictures that should be put in the book, and then Carl, he's phenomenal at editing and putting the pictures together in the book, so it was really a nice cooperation. Only 400 copies of the first book were printed in 2016. Okay, so I guess that was all of the article. Anyway, it's an interesting situation. They didn't really go into her final days as far as what had happened, but she was working in a dinner theater in Biloxi. I guess she was in her 30s, like late 30s, and this was, I guess, for her sort of a step down from what she had been doing, because she had been able to secure some Vegas acts prior to that. But, so she was working that scene of, dinner theaters in towns outside of Hollywood. I mean, she was paying the bills, but I don't think she was particularly happy because she, according to friends, had started drinking, and the alcohol and the cost of just maintaining that sort of a situation was wearing on her finances, but also on her looks. And she had this divorce situation that was going on in this custody battle, so there was a lot of stress. And, yes, in that final year, she also tried to, create some publicity for herself by becoming involved with this character, LaVey. I think they actually could have been friends if she had lived longer, because I think they both had a similar perspective on, what to do in order to get ahead in this industry. I don't know that it was necessarily the right point of view, because they were both sort of playing one-sided characters. They're both like playing cartoons, and that only has a certain degree of longevity. Like, even in the situation of his particular church, I don't think that he was as involved with the dark elements of, say, characters like the Sharon Tate situation, where those people seem to be involved with something much more hardcore, as well as the fact that, a lot of the stuff, the allegations about abuse with children and so forth, they had legitimate reasons for concern within these darker circles. Those did exist. I don't think LaVey was necessarily part of that. I think that he, on the surface, had skimmed it, was, creating a character, especially in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. But there was definitely a darker element that has always existed, and that element sort of showed its head, in these very graphic and public situations. So after that, it was very difficult for him to maintain his image, because it had been affected by something much darker, and there was no way to really recuperate from that. And as far as Mansfield was concerned, the cartoon that she was sort of portraying, like a more excessive version of, say, a Marilyn Monroe type character, she also couldn't maintain it, because it was becoming too much, and I don't know that she necessarily was that person. She just thought that's what the public wanted, but they only wanted it to a certain degree, up to a certain point. And as I said, I think she was neglecting half of her audience by not appealing to females and just sort of focusing directly on males, when she actually had a life that, women would be able to understand, with her 4 kids and all of these other things. But she just wasn't promoting that aspect. I think she really loved her children, though, and was willing to, secure a relationship with a lawyer, just maybe to get custody, and was probably enamored with whatever, support son got hurt. You know, those things are probably, there's some element of truth to some of those aspects. I don't know if they necessarily had an affair or not. Probably not. I don't think so. But, you know, Brody at that time was very concerned about it, had this kind of jealous mentality. The weird thing is, let's say that, you know, he did light the candle and LaVey did have that exchange with him. LaVey said that within 1 year that he would pass, and within that year that he would pass by way of a car accident. So LaVey published that. The thing is, Brody, after that incident, had, I think, 4 or 5 car accidents within a single year, and then in fact it was a car accident that took his life, and also Mansfield's life, and it was literally within that 1 year period that LaVey said it would happen. So now, you know, it's hard to say, like, was this, you know, because Brody had been told, and now he was kind of subconsciously creating this situation in his life where he was getting into accident after accident, or was there an actual drinking problem, and that was the cause, and LaVey maybe sensed that this is a guy who is going to get into some sort of situation. Maybe he had seen him drive, maybe he had seen him drive drunk, because apparently Brody had a history of this, of drinking and driving. So, you know, to make a statement that within 1 year there's going to be an accident, it might just be that he had picked up on something that seemed sort of inevitable with the kind of lifestyle that you know, these two were leading, because Mansfield was drinking excessively, as was Brody, and, you know, unknown at what degree LaVey was privy to that, but that was something that their friends were aware of. So he might have just jumped on that and said something publicly, but then when it happened that they did get into a car accident, you know, he was then forever linked with the story. The bad thing is that LaVey never, you know, kind of gave them sort of peace, in a sense that, you know, once they did pass, he could have let this go, but he continued to promote and publicize his relatively short relationship of just like literally a year, you know, with this Mansfield, with Jayne, and he promoted that pretty much to his own passing, you know, like for decades afterwards, because there was a certain bankability, and he had those photographs, and so they were published over and over again. But, you know, it's not like he knew her for a very long time, so that was a little bit unscrupulous, so I don't think he really cared about her. I think she was somebody who, you know, especially in the waning years of his particular cult, or whatever you want to call it, this group that he had started, this was something that he could, you know, always sort of publish, photograph, you know, always get his picture in the paper with these pictures that he had of her, Sammy Davis Jr. There were a couple of them, and he sort of pushed that till the end, even though I don't think there was any real meat to their relationship, or probably even any of the other people that he claimed to be involved with. But I think that he didn't really have that much left, so he didn't really have respect for her either, you know, especially once she did pass. And she's kind of been forever linked with this group, because those pictures have been circulating ever since. So that was a little bit, you know, unfortunate, because I don't think that this was anything that she was involved with in a very hardcore or dark manner. I think she was just desperate for any kind of publicity, and, you know, when her sex kitten image was sort of waning, then she went to this kind of extreme alternative to just get anything out there. So there was like some real desperation in her final year, and I think she met up with a character that was a little bit too excessive and not particularly happy in his own existence. And it was just this strange sort of, meeting of this particular group. And I don't know that LaVey necessarily put any kind of curse on Brody or anything, but he did say it. And I think it's because he was aware of, he was perceptive, and I think that he realized that this is sort of an inevitable kind of doomed situation. He must have been as surprised as anyone else when they did actually pass in such a short period of time. You would hope that he would have just kind of quieted down, though, afterwards, because, just out of respect for her, but he didn't, and it just was something that he utilized for the next several decades, like through the end of his particular career. So, I think it's a scandal, but I don't think that the individuals involved they were aware that they were making a scandal. That she was particularly aware that this is how she wanted, these photographs published so that maybe she could get a movie role out of it. Maybe she was looking into the horror film industry, because that was something that she, in her later years, like the sort of scream queen image, so she was looking at all of that stuff, and this might have been her angle of trying to do that, to publicly sort of promote herself, that, oh, look, I'm into these dark things, and then maybe she could get a role like that, because she badly wanted to make her way back into Hollywood. She knew that sex kitten kind of thing was over, but she didn't really know what angle to re-enter the industry. And when she met up with this Brody individual, the drinking and all of that just became excessive, and I just think this was, not necessarily a situation of her getting involved with this LaVey character, but rather it was already in a downward spiral because of Brody's, tendency to drink and get her into these, excessive situations where she was drinking. And if they're also driving, I mean, it's just, a recipe for a kind of disaster. It is sad, though, because she did have 4 children, and, all of her efforts to try and gain custody of them, by even having this relationship with Brody, all were in vain, because they did go and live with Mickey Margate, and then, as we all know, then her one daughter did become actually a very famous actress. You can see some of their features, are kind of similar to her mother's in some respect, but then, it is sad that she grew up without her, and, so this is one of those Hollywood stories where I think you had a smart person who had certain assets, but she wasn't perceptive of the entire package that needs to be sold to Hollywood, and it was kind of looking down on it in a way that she was not respectful of the fact that there was a second, there was a female audience that she was completely negating and bypassing, and that might have been what pushed her onto, a cycle that then she could not recover from, because it was just a very one-sided thing. So I think she had potential, but she didn't, know how to present herself in a long term, something with longevity. She had not considered that in her estimation, and one of her last-ditch efforts was to become involved with this other guy who, at that time, that might have been his heyday in the 60s, of just, she was probably enamored with him to some degree, and probably interested in how he was doing it, because, here this guy was, and he was probably getting photographed everywhere. He was sort of the it guy in town, especially in San Francisco, and so I think she was interested in learning from him in an area that she respected, which which was publicity. I don't think she really respected acting or, any other aspect of Hollywood, but I think she respected the publicity, and I think she felt he knew how to do it, and to a degree, he did know how to do it. But even he, because he was playing a one-sided kind of character, saturated that concept. He became oversaturated within the marketplace, and then it couldn't be maintained. And then when a darker thing showed up, he wasn't able to counter it with anything. So he was also a victim of very similar kind of, methodology that just was not thought out. Clearly, I think these were both smart people that just didn't fully understand the whole mechanism, and they were looking at things in a very surface, almost sarcastic or jaded manner, especially him, but I think she was too, and I think that's why they both missed a kind of vital point that didn't allow them to have the kind of longevity that they normally would have. So anyway, this was I guess you can call it a scandal, of Jayne Mansfield and Anton LaVey, and their kind of short-lived relationship, but then, one, because of the photographs, has lingered on and maintained for so many decades afterwards, because you still see those pictures being promoted of LaVey with Mansfield and Sammy Davis and just a couple of other people, especially when they're promoting, articles are promoting this thing of Satanism within the industry. They always use these photographs, so it's never left. Like, she is one of those images that, you have this picture, but then they can claim that it's still happening within Hollywood circles, that there's still this dark element, even though I don't think Mansfield was into the dark stuff at all. She was not involved with it long enough, and I don't think LaVey was either. So, but their images are just presented because those are the ones that they can find. I'm not saying that kind of Luciferianism doesn't exist in Hollywood. There's plenty of evidence showing that it does, but people don't have the same kind of examples as they did with these sort of publicity shots that these guys took with that photographer Fisher, so it was just a combination of things, but they're forever linked because of it. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoy this, and